of these seminars is really to open up spaces and afford people with dynamic research in ODL or in leadership position to come to this platform and to share their research with us. It's just a way to facilitate conversations and to open up spaces for a much more deeper, more nuanced understanding of the ODEL fraternity and to move forward. And this morning we are hosting Dr. Mary Oko. Mary Oko is currently head of the unit for distance education at the University of Pretoria. Unmute, please. Dr. Mary Oko?
Yes, I'm here, sir.
Oh, yeah, I wanted to tell the gathering that I was introduced to you by Dr. Ruth Aluko.
Yes.
And you work with her, of course.
Yes.
Yeah, Dr. Ruth Aluko and I have come a long way. We have co-edited a book on quality assurance in ODEL. And I said to her, I need you to link me to Dr. O. She gave me the address, everything. So I didn't Google you. I was connected to you by a living human being.
Yes.
And Dr. Oko also, I invited her to facilitate a panel in the ODEL conference. I was project leader of that. Actually, that conference resides in the UNESCO chair. It's a continuation of the UNESCO chair, except this time around we co-hosted it with the Directorate of Research and Innovation with the support of the Vice Principal Research. So we have grown bigger. But yeah, thanks for honoring this opportunity. And it's a really privilege. It was a privilege to sit in a panel which you facilitated, albeit I had a lot of technical challenges. I couldn't come in, but it's neither here nor there. But you have been receiving really wonderful commendations from across the oceans from Professor Som Naidu, and he thinks that you did a good job. And I'm mentioning this so that people here who are gathered know that you have just facilitated one of the most productive global panels, and for that I thank you. I thank you very much from the bottom of my heart. Dr. Oko, as I mentioned, is the manager of the Unit for Distance Education at the University of Pretoria in the Faculty of Education. She has a very broad and wide, diverse experience, spanning over 30 years in teaching and teacher training field and e-learning implementation in higher education. And she's the founding chair of the education department at Africa Nazarene University and the founding director of the Institute of Open Distance Learning at that very same university, Africa Nazarene University, between the periods 2008 2015. Dr. Oko also worked at Kabarak University as the director of Kabarak University online from 2015 to 2018. And she served at the United States International University as the director of the Africa online program before joining the University of Pretoria. So we are really having someone with very glowing accolades. And look, for me, it's a real pleasure to have you in. I'm using that unit extensively. Last year, I had Dr. Aluko present here in the seminar. So I'm really interested in what is it that you're going to bring on the table. But I am really convinced from your facilitation of the session in which I chaired, I know that we have someone of reputable work experience and track record in our midst. So with all those words, Dr. Oko, welcome to the UNESCO chair, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Professor Leseka. Good morning, colleagues, and good morning to our chair. I come to you with a wealth of experience, as been explained, in the teaching field, but not necessarily an expert in everything. I, as most fellow Africans know, we travel long journeys before we end up with what we really would like to do in our field. And I'm one of those people who traveled long journey from different institutions, depending on whichever of those institutions offered me a scholarship, and studying whatever they chose, and working wherever the job availed itself, until I ended up here at the University of Pretoria. Let me just try and project my presentation and get started right away. Thank you very much for the introduction, Chair. Let's take a moment and in that moment, honor or pray for those who have been infected or affected by the COVID-19 globally. Thank you very much, colleagues. So my topic is challenges and opportunities posed by COVID-19 lockdown, taking a deeper look into the teaching and learning support systems in a distance education program at the Unit for Distance Education. Now, when I'm speaking to you, I am not speaking to you as a representative of University of Pretoria. I am only speaking to you as a representative of the Unit for Distance Education. My presentation is going to be short. I will start with my an introduction to the presentation, then move on to the processes of digital migration a general look at the digital migration processes in higher education institutions after the lockdown. And then I will zero into the digital migration by the Unit for Distance Education. And then we'll go into the debate on quality criteria, because that is the big thing in this digital migration process. And then we will discuss a little bit about the different e-learning quality criteria models that are available there that we've ignored for years. And then we will also go into what is current in the dialogue in the academia during this COVID-19 lockdown, and we will include with that. So right away, I will go into the introduction. And for my introduction, I have a video clip that I retrieved from the Obama Foundation YouTube channel. Please let us listen to it together and just pay attention to what he's saying. President Obama was talking at a graduation of high school students. And I think the message that he had for them applies very well in our situation in higher education.
The audio is not clear, Dr. Oko.
We cannot hear.
Colleagues, let me try it again because I heard that you are not able to hear. Let me try it again and see if you are able to hear this time around.
We still cannot hear. You need to share your screen as well as your sound, please.
Can you hear now?
No?
Can anyone with the technical know-how please support so that we can get this done? What should be done here? I know there are technical people here.
Right, let me try again. I've now put my audio on and my video on. Let's try again. There's a section of it that will not come out, but the rest of it will. We are trying for the last time. If not, then we'll proceed.
Dr. Ooko, can you check if the video itself is not muted?
No, Dr. Oko, it's not working really.
All right.
Maybe if you can just give us a gist of what.
All right.
Yeah, because it shouldn't really stall holders.
Yes, I'll just give you the gist of what the video is all about. And the president is saying that it may look like the adults in our communities seem to know what they're doing, but the pandemic has revealed the fact that we really all do not know what we are doing. And that the society only works when we think of each other and we come out to assist each other. And he's also stressing the fact that the future belongs to the young generation. And the young generation is going to come up bravely and face the challenges of the future. And they're going to have to come up with solutions to those challenges, being aware of the fact that the older generation may not be aware or may not possess all the solutions. The president is also saying we are going to come out and support each other like we've never done before. And if you reflect back in the pandemics that took place in the past, humanity came out and supported each other. The president is also asking the young people not to be afraid. He's asking them not to be afraid. And he's asking them to come out confidently and bring forth their suggestions. And I think that is what we are doing in the academia, those who are there before us may not have the solutions to our challenges. But we, the young professionals, the young academics, must come out bravely with the suggestions that we have, come out with confidence, and talk about the suggestions that we may have towards providing solutions to our challenges. And I think that's why we are here today, and that we need to collaborate. We need to partner. No one will work in isolation and come up with a solution to the challenge that we are facing today, the challenge of COVID-19. Now, when we went into lockdown, most universities or most institutions of higher learning were not prepared. There was unpreparedness by all. But were we supposed to be prepared? The question is, were we supposed to be prepared? And obviously, yes, we were prepared. We were supposed to be prepared for the unknown. There were rampant issues of poor technological infrastructure. We hear about poor internet bandwidth in different institutions of higher learning across the world, not only in Africa. Students were not equipped with technological devices. In fact, in most learning institutions, even the lecturers themselves were not equipped with technological devices. Facilitators, lecturers, and students were lacking in digital skills. And most of them never really thought they were going to need these digital skills. Digital skills were stressed in institutions that were offering distance education. But even in such institutions, not everybody was involved in distance education, and not a lot of people showed interest in distance education. So they did not see the need to equip themselves with digital skills. And where they did, they only learned enough to enable them to manage their teaching and learning processes and keep their records. Most learning institutions that were practicing dual mode of distance education lacked in a serious or well-defined quality criteria framework. And some of them involved in dual mode of teaching, or those of them involved in distance education, lacked even policies to guide their practice. Now, at the unit for distance education, things were different, and I would like to share with you how we are handling ourselves or how we are running our processes during this lockdown. Now, the unit for distance education is just a small entity within the Faculty of Education. So the unit of distance education just serves teachers. We train teachers from South Africa. And the unit for distance education only runs 2 programs for teachers already in the field. So it was set up to provide upskilling or in-service training for teachers who already have basic qualification in the teaching industry. And we only ran 2 programs, the Bachelor of Education Honors Program in Learning Support, Computer Integrated Education, and Educational Management. We also ran a program in the Advanced Diploma in School Management and Leadership program. And in both these programs, we have about 3,700 students. Now, this unit was established in the year 2002 as a print-based distance education program, and teaching and learning resources were dispatched to students through the post office system. And within the cycle of teaching, contact sessions were conducted in physical venues spread across the country, and communication was basically through mailing system, the post office. Now, prior to the pandemic, the University of Pretoria had made a decision in 2015 to adopt the hybrid mode of delivery across the university. And as such, the Unit for Distance Education was also requested to start migrating into the digital space. And the UDE started migrating its administrative processes first, and followed by migration of teaching and learning processes. Now, at the time of the lockdown in March 2020, the UDE had already moved its teaching and learning processes on the official learning management system of the University of Pretoria, which we call ClickUp, our learning management system, which is the Blackboard learning management system, and we call it the ClickUp. We had already moved our teaching and learning processes, but what we found out is that most of the facilitators simply loaded content on the platform and left the students to struggle on their own. Now, when I took over in 2019, one of my main missions was to ensure that appropriate e-learning pedagogical processes were applied and that technology was integrated fully and used by the students and by the facilitators. Now, upon the lockdown in March 2020, we had to fast track all these processes. And the first thing that we did was introduce virtual orientation. Virtual orientation, previously we used to go to the different venues across the country and give students an orientation to our programs. But as we were not able to travel beginning March 2020, we introduced the virtual orientation sessions, which we conducted through the Blackboard Collaborate system, a system that enables us to meet virtually with students within the ClickUp LMS. All content on the was put on the learning management system, and all pedagogical activities, facilitators were trained to conduct pedagogical activities on the ClickUp system. And the contact sessions that we previously used to travel across the country to give or to conduct went on to the Blackboard Collaborate. And submission of all assignments also went through Turnitin on ClickUp. We encouraged our facilitators to conduct weekly discussion forums with our students also within the ClickUp. And of course, just like all other institutions of learning, we conducted our virtual graduation last year and also this year. But then very soon, when the first assessment took place and we realized that most of our students were failing, we realized that most of our students were digitally challenged and that we were running because we knew what we were doing and where we wanted to go. We were running, but we were leaving most of our students behind. So we paused, reflected, and we conducted a survey. The purpose of the survey was threefold. One, we wanted to assess the e-readiness level of incoming students. And second, we wanted to identify the gaps in the knowledge of students and the needed areas of support. And also we wanted to provide informed needed support based on the research data, the survey data. Our students that took part in the study, we found out that 45% of them, 42% of them were male and 58% of them were female. And we also found out that the age bracket, and this is very common in distance education, that we were dealing with adults, that only about 2% of them were between the age of 31 and 30 and 40, and 69% of them were between the age of 41 and 50, and then the rest were between the age of 51 and 60. Now, this age of students, this bracket age of students, are people who never were exposed to computers before. So one of the questions that we asked them was about their computer skills, and the access that they have to the internet. And surprisingly, 85% of them told us that they have had some opportunity to use computers, or just had a day or two training on how to use computers. And 20% of them were novice, never used computers before, and only 30% said they were advanced in using their computers and they'd had used computers before in their place of work. In regards to access to internet, 84% of them said they use internet regularly at work, and 99% said they owned phones and they used the internet all the time for WhatsApp and social media and communication with their loved ones. 18% of them said they only used computers in cyber cafes when there's need and only when they need to send messages to either for place of work or for their personal obligations. And also 18% said they don't have computers at all, but they use computers only through the internet cafes. When it comes to email and computers ownership, out of 140 students, 129 of them said yes, they use email regularly, and only one student said they don't use email regularly. And they have the first one, 129% of them said they own email accounts, and 1% said they did not own email accounts. And 113 out of the 140 students said they used email regularly, and 13 of them said they did not use email regularly. When it comes to computer ownership or computer training, 105 of them said they've had some form of training. 30% said they never had any training, and basic course in MS Word, 90% of them said they had officially obtained basic course in MS Word, and 39 of them said they'd never. From the research findings, we found that we were planning for rather than with our students. And that is why the first assessment that was done online gave that was done online gave us very, very poor results. We also found out that even though we were running, we had unclear role descriptions amongst ourselves, the team that runs the distance education unit. We also found that a lack of communication between the stakeholders was an issue, and we were not communicating really effectively with our students about their needs and about how they wanted to be taught. And we were working in silos and going different directions. There was also anxiety and uncertainty among the people. And I think this was common in most learning institutions. We never talk about it, but people were anxious. And because of the uncertainty about the future, people were panicking. So as a result of that survey, we came up with an intervention strategy. And in our intervention strategy, one of the key things that we adopted was a collegial model of management, which was adopted for the benefit of distance education students. As Bush said, we came together and identified our talents and tapped from each other's talent. So each time we were challenged, we sat down and explored possibilities of solving the challenge together as a team. Members of the team were encouraged to work cooperatively rather than in silos. And actually, I came to find out that even our administrative assistants, some of them were very vast in use of technological tools used in teaching and learning. So we requested that all of us, including admin assistants, work together to map the way forward to respond also to our challenges. And for the first time, we revised our e-tutoring job responsibilities. We also revised our instructional designer job responsibilities, and we introduced a new office called the E-Learning Development and Support Office. So this team got together on a regular basis. And when I say regular basis, I meant we have officially organized operational meetings every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks, we have our ops meeting where we review activities of the last 2 weeks, identify challenges faced, and map the way forward together, including our admin assistants, our administration officers, management team, instructional designer, e-learning development and support officer, and the e-tutors. And our main goal was to set and achieve, set goals and achieve them for the benefit of our distance education students. We also set up a program coordinators committee because we realized there was a bridge, there was a gap between the UDE and the subject matter experts who actually oversee the teaching. So we set up a program coordinators committee, and the program coordinators were to form a bridge between the management of the unit for distance education and subject matter academic departments. So when the unit for distance education has issues to be solved, we pass those issues to the program coordinators, who then proceed to discuss with their heads of departments and the other lecturers or subject matter experts in their departments before a solution is arrived at, which is then later brought back to the unit for distance education for resolving. We also started a meeting with our sponsors. Most of our students are sponsored by external agencies such as the ETD-SETA, and we formed a steering committee, sponsors steering committee. The sponsor steering committee involves the departments of education, the ETD-SETA itself that pays for the tuition, and members of the unit for distance education and a representative of the dean's office. We meet twice a year, and the purpose of our meeting is to review students' performance, and we have to give a report to the sponsors and to the departments of education in regards to students' performance and map the way forward. Another strategy that we introduced is a collegial technological support. When I started my presentation and you could not hear the voice from the video, which I think is from the other end, or maybe I did not activate what needs to be activated to enable you to hear. We needed help of an external expert. So we did realize that each one of us had some kind of technological skill. We were all specialized in different areas, but we needed to bring together these skills to be able to support our students. And one of the things that we agreed upon with the sponsors is to go back to the field and conduct a digital literacy campaign, because we did realize that we admitted students in our program who are digitally illiterate. And for us to teach them properly, we needed to go back and conduct a digital literacy campaign amongst our students, majority of our students come from the Limpopo province, Mpumalanga province, and a few others from other provinces. Now, with the skeletal members of staff that we have, we could not do it. So we reached out to an NGO called Siafunda. Siafunda is an NGO that conducts entrepreneurial development, business development, different kind of activities amongst communities in South Africa. And technology training is one of the activities that they conduct across the country. They already have computer labs spread across the country. So we reached out to them and we have entered into an agreement where they are going to conduct ongoing digital literacy campaign in the different provinces amongst our students. So we have come up with a digital literacy campaign manual that we have presented to them, and they're going to use that manual to meet with our students who are digitally challenged and go through a 1-month training. And within 1 month training, we are basically just going to introduce them to the computer, introduce them to the basic Microsoft Word, email, and introduce them to our learning management system. It's a very, very small manual of just about 10 pages. And the campaign is going to begin from the 1st of September. We are hoping that every time we admit students, that we will direct them to Siafunda computer labs. And there they will be given an introduction to computer and equipped with basic skills so that by the time they come to us, at least they will be able to manipulate our learning management system with ease. We have also realized the importance of simplifying all our technological processes. So once they get to the learning management system, we have taken the guidelines provided by Blackboard or by our Education Innovation Department, and we've simplified their guidelines so that each guideline only has 2 to 3 steps. For example, if a student was to say, how do I change my password? How are you doing, Prof? We simply give them. We simply give them a simplified guideline, and as technological, as Davis said in his TAM model, technology adoption model, that if you simplify the processes, the users are likely to adopt whatever technological tool you want them to use. And if they find that it is useful, they will adapt it. So we've tried this and we've seen that it's working. Students do not want to read a whole page of guidelines just to learn how to change their password or just to learn how to submit their assignment. So we are also conducting ongoing continuous virtual orientation sessions. This is done through the Office of the E-Learning Development Support Officer. On a monthly basis, we have an orientation session for already enrolled students and already practicing facilitators. So the orientation sessions are ongoing and they are on monthly basis. So students and facilitators are allowed to attend these orientation sessions as often as they wish until they feel they are comfortable enough to use our systems. We have also introduced the virtual call center. Normally we have a call center at the Unit for Distance Education based at the Faculty of Education. But because everybody dispersed, we did realize that students are still going to call for inquiries. They're still going to call for issues of concern, for solutions to issues of concern. So we introduced the virtual call center. And then we introduced what we are calling a Module O. Module O is a playground. Immediately a student is admitted into the university or into the Unit for Distance Education, we enroll them in a module that does not count for credit, that is not marked. And this module takes them on a journey within the learning management system. They have a whole month to play around within this module, but there is a facilitator who keeps on cheering them up, who keep on coaching them, who keep on supporting them and encouraging them to go through the module. And we also introduced purchase of laptops for all students. We are cheating ourselves when we are telling our students that we are going to teach them through our learning management system, and yet they don't have access to a technological device. So we made an agreement with sponsors that for every student admitted, a laptop must form part of the tuition fee. And so far we have already purchased 525 laptops. We just delivered 300 laptops yesterday to Limpopo for our new students. And those new students are going to be engaged in digital literacy campaign with Siafunda. And once they finish the digital literacy campaign, they are going to be introduced to the module O. So there's no point asking students to study online when they do not have the technological device to enable them to do so. We have a total of 250 students who are going to be joining us from Mpumalanga. We have already discussed with the Department of Education there, and they have seen the sense that it is important to purchase computers for these students. We are in the process of doing so. And the university has been assisting them in purchasing those computers, identifying a provider who is a University of Pretoria provider who's been purchasing the computers that have been dispatched to Limpopo and will soon be dispatched to Mpumalanga. Of course, again, we introduced the Office of the E-Learning Development and Support Officer. This is somebody who is highly qualified, a former student of University of Pretoria, who is enrolled in her PhD program, and her job is to identify tools that we need to, e-learning tools that we need to expose our facilitators and our students to. Her job is to simplify all the processes that we need to use to train our teachers, our e-tutors and our students. And her job is to conduct regular orientation session. Of course, she has a team that she works with. She's also developed what we call the how-to's manuals. These are the simplified guidelines, how-to's manuals. We take the guidelines from Blackboard, we take the guidelines from Education Innovation, and we simplify them, each guideline with 2 to 3 steps only, and we distribute those, or we have put them also on ClickUp so that when students need them to refer to them, they simply go to ClickUp, retrieve whatever solution that they are looking for, and go through the guidelines. We introduced also what is called collegial content and pedagogical support. Now, when I came into the unit for distance education, the first thing we were told is that we are a management entity and we did not have anything to do with academics. But we all soon realized that the academics needed support from us, and that we needed also to collaborate with the library so that students are introduced to e-resources, and also facilitators are also introduced to the e-resources, the current e-resources that we have at Groenkloof Library. We developed a template, a uniform template to be used on ClickUp, because what happened before was that every facilitator uploaded their content in their style. And this confused our digitally challenged students, because every time they logged into a different module, in one module they saw a different layout, and they went to a different module and saw a completely different layout. And so they were learning all the time. So they were spending more time dealing with technology than spending most of their time actually learning the content. So we developed a uniform template that all module coordinators, that all facilitators use on ClickUp, so that when students log onto a module on ClickUp, They know they are starting with learning, they are starting with the introduction where the facilitators are introducing themselves. They are going into the class regulations or class guidelines, and then they are going into the introduction of the module and then learning outcomes, that what they are expected to learn, and they also have the study guide uploaded there for them to read, and then they start their studies. And the content is divided into different units, and the same flow, the same pattern is used in every module on ClickUp. We found that with this, then our students don't get confused. We also did this keeping in mind that flexibility can be overwhelming for a diligently challenged student. Although we are encouraging our module coordinators and our facilitators to source e-content and different types of media, but we are also aware of the fact that flexibility can be overwhelming to digitally challenged students, so it is controlled flexibility. So the unit for distance education goes through all the modules uploaded on ClickUp to ensure that the template is followed and to ensure that the content uploaded is relevant and is brief and specific and is clearly done. We also conduct assessment at one particular time within the cycle, within the semester. And of course, we introduced the pedagogy of care and compassion, because we do realize that at this time of the lockdown, everybody's infected and affected. Not only us, we are not the only ones who have lost loved ones. We are not the only ones who have fallen sick. Even our students have lost loved ones, and our students have fallen sick. And therefore, the need for us to really take seriously pedagogy of care and compassion. We talk about caregiver, caregiving, care receiver situation. So we are requesting our e-tutors. Even this morning, our e-tutors had a meeting, our facilitators had a meeting to talk about this very, very topic of compassion, of pedagogy of care and compassion, that we look at our students as care receivers and we look at ourselves as caregivers, that we apply a little bit of kindness during this difficult time. And we aim at alleviating suffering and promoting the well-being of our students. Empathy is very important at this time. Humanity, just like President Obama said at the beginning, we are dealing with humanity here. We are not dealing with robots. We are dealing with human beings with feelings. And let's practice a bit of kindness. They are already struggling with personal obligation, professional obligations, and their study is in the middle of it all. So what did we do about assessment? Previously, we used to have exams done at different venues across the country. For our BEd Honors programs, we introduced 3 assignments in the cycle. The first assignment that they normally do in the first 1 month of the semester counts for 10%. The second assignment counts for 20%. And the third assignment counts for 70%. And this information is given to students at the point of admission so that they know how to plan for their studies. For the advanced diploma program, we also have 3 assignments that the students submit. The first one contributes 30% of the final mark. The second assignment contributes 30%, and the third assignment contributes for 40%. All assignments are submitted through our Turnitin platform on ClickUp, on our learning management system. And remember, we train them on what ClickUp is through the library. When we are providing them training on e-resources, the library always trains them on Turnitin to check for plagiarism. The unit for distance education through the Office of the Instructional Designer puts emphasis on this, and we continuously train them on this. So all these things the trainings are going on continuously throughout the semester. They are repeated over and over again. And when we see that a student is struggling, we refer them to the next training session. This training section takes place on a monthly basis. So ladies and gentlemen, this is what we did to mitigate the problems that we found out when we conducted the survey. And this is what we did to ensure that teaching and learning continues within our learning management system. And this is what we did to make sure that our students are supported before they enroll and after they enroll in our programs. I will ask that if I go beyond the time allocated, that somebody lets me know, that Prof, you let me know. And now I would like us, yes?
You are on, the seminar is normally, it starts at 10 until 12. So long as we can have about 45 to 50 minutes of question and answers, it's fine. I think you can wrap around in the next 5 or 10 minutes. That's okay.
Thank you very much, Prof. I will do that.
Yeah, sure.
Now, one of the things that we needed to do again was to reflect on our quality criteria. The subject of quality has always been there with us. President Nyerere, in his book, Freedom and Unity, said, when we say that we want the freedom to take our positions as equals with other countries in the world, we must realize what this means. So when we say as institutions of higher learning that we want to be equal to the University of South Africa, to UNISA, or to UK Open, or to Indira Gandhi, those institutions that have practiced distance education for years, when we say that we want the freedom to take our positions as equals with them in the world, and that is the direction in which COVID-19 has propelled us to. What does this mean? It means that our teachers, our doctors, our engineers, our technicians, as well as our sweepers and laborers must aim at being as good at those found anywhere else. So in this case, our lecturers, our e-tutors, our researchers, our subject matter experts, our ODEL managers, our admin assistants in our institutions must aim as being as good as those found in those world-renowned institutions of distance education. They were there before us, they have set up the standards, and we must collaborate with them to improve on our service provision. When we do that, then that is true equality. Anything else is just sentiment. So the Unit for Distance Education adopted the NADEOSA Quality Criteria Framework. And the NADEOSA Quality Criteria Framework is a very well written document that requires the institutions that are practicing distance education, and I think in this case, all institutions of higher learning needs to pay attention to the NADEOSA Quality Criteria Framework, the National Association of Distance Education of South Africa. NADEOSA provides clear guidelines for maintenance of quality within ODEL. They talk about policy and planning, learners' characteristics, program development, course design, and course materials. They give guidelines on how to do assessment, provision of learner support, the human resource strategy, how you should equip your ODEL management, management administration, collaboration relationships, quality assurance, information dissemination, and also the outcome of our work in distance education. Now, it's known that quality was lacking in higher education during the remote teaching sessions because there was rampant insufficient e-learning infrastructure, insufficient e-learning course content. There were financial constraints. Nobody budgeted for the lockdown. There was lack of affordable internet bandwidth. These are the kind of things we are hearing in dialogues, and lack of digital skills. But the key influencers of quality in e-learning practice include course design as stipulated by NADEOSA, content support factors, assessment factors, instructional factors, learner characteristics, instructor characteristics, and technological factors. We have gone ahead at the UDE and reviewed other quality criteria models, frameworks. The 3P model by Khan puts a lot of emphasis on the people, the processes, and the products. And we also looked at the PDPP model by Zhang and Cheng, and it puts emphasis on planning, development, process, and product. And the EQ model, QF model by Musomi, and they put emphasis on a look on of institutional, organization, technology, the pedagogy, use support system for the students, and faculty support. They also look at instructional design and course development. And you may be interested to know that this model was adopted by a university in Sweden and a university in Iran. Now, the TMLF model by Omwenga and Rodriguez, technology-mediated learning evaluation framework. This one talks about technical system functioning. It actually puts emphasis on the processes that any technology mediation for education purposes has a structure. It says any technology mediated program must have a structure, a process, and an outcome. So they talk about technical systems functioning. You have to have a technical system that's working, and you must also pay attention to the human perspectives, the people involved, the students who are the key people involved, the subject matter experts, and those who are managing the system, and the overall impact on the education system. And this model was adopted by the University of Nairobi in the year 2006. So my recommendation, or our recommendation at the Unit for Distance Education, is that each HE institution must now pause, reflect, and adopt a quality criteria that works for them. But more importantly, that they must engage key holders in formulating such a quality criteria. And they must involve students. We are not hearing the voices of students. We are hearing the voices of experts. They must involve students, sponsors, educators, and higher education administrators in a participatory development process of a suitable quality criteria. The Unit for Distance Education at this point of reflection, our reflection is on our quality criteria, and we are working very closely with NADEOSA to see what we can change, what we can improve on, and what we can recommend going forward. Now, what about the dialogue in academia? You know, having participated in your e-learning conference, the one thing that I had coming out very clearly is the digital divide. Almost every country is talking about the digital divide amongst the population, and also the inequality in resource distribution. I also heard about issues of capacity building and professional development. When and how are we going to conduct professional development? As I said at the UDE, professional development is an ongoing phenomenon. It's not done once at the beginning. It's not done once at the end of the semester. It's ongoing on a monthly basis. It's available online, and the users log in and out as they wish. The trainings go on for students, and the trainings go on for the facilitators. I also heard about the issue of leadership during a time of crisis. And here I want to quote Dr. Olcott, who said that today's leader in Odell or in higher education needs to be a person who is very creative and brave. You have to be brave because you are not going to be popular. You got to be willing to introduce changes. This person must be willing to introduce changes and manage change. But in doing all that, they must do it collegially. They must work with their team to introduce those changes and to implement those changes. One of the biggest dialogues also is reimagining institutions of higher learning of the future. We are not going back to where we were, or even where we are. Things are changing, and they are changing very fast indeed. So let's start reimagining. Where do we want to see UNISA in the next 5 years? Where do we want to see the UDE in the next 5 years? It's an exciting time in higher education, and everybody's contribution is welcome. And that is what makes it exciting, because when we explore all these contributions, we will end up where we are supposed to be in a collegial manner. And in my conclusion, it is important, ladies and gentlemen, that all stakeholders should be given a chance to reflect on the main difficulties that higher education institutions have encountered in adopting remote learning and intervene to better harness the potential of remote teaching and learning. We all have a part to play. All of us have a part to play. So as President Obama said at the beginning, don't be afraid. Please do what you think is right. Build community. And finally, put the student in the center of it all. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I thank you also for the opportunity, Chair, and it is my hope that we will continue conversing about this as we move forward. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Oko. There's an echo. Could you switch off your camera, Dr. Oko? I suppose that's what makes an intervention. Yeah, that was the cause of the interruption. Thank you very much, Dr. Oko. I think you have given us a mouthful, and I just thought it would be important for me to put Dr. Oko's presentation into perspective. And I'll just take about 5 or so minutes, and then I'll open the floor for question and answer and discussions. What we normally do here in the chair, or what has been happening in the past, is that we have been inviting experts, people come in and talk about the research that they're doing. We have been very fortunate this year. We have had, I think, 2 or 3 international guests that came in, and 3 actually. We had a distance e-learning consultant from Australia, Melbourne, and we had a professor from Concordia University in Chicago in the United States. And then we had Professor Karen Ferreira-Mayes from Eswatini. All of them brought a whole variety of perspectives. Before that, I inaugurate, every year I inaugurate the UNISA, the UNESCO Chair Research Seminars with a presentation. I always set the stage to open up and to set the agenda. And I think I invited Professor Sefoto, Professor Hasina Ibrahim, who is a research professor in the University of UNISA. My point is, we have been bringing in lots and lots of people that are considered experts in a whole variety of distance learning components. And every one of them comes in and shares with us the sort of research they are doing, and that's highly commendable. The difference between all those presentations and the presentation by Dr. Oko today is this. as opposed to people who tell us the research they are doing, Dr. Oko shared with us the actual practice. Dr. Oko is a manager, and what she did here was to share with us what the Unit for Distance Education at the University of Pretoria is doing. For me, these are tangible, concrete interventions, and I couldn't hesitate but to link them with the conversation that we had here at in the UNESCO Chair Research Seminar given by Professor Som Naidu. Professor Som Naidu, in about a month or so ago, came and gave a presentation, and what he spoke about was the issue of resilience in higher education institutions during times of crisis. Those of you who attended the panel discussion, in which actually it's a panel discussion that Dr. Oko facilitated. I was there with Professor Som Naidu. Professor Som Naidu raised what can be called the hard questions. He basically raised issues that Dr. Oko here showed that they are doing. And I think one of his first questions was, why did higher education institutions have to close? Couldn't higher education institutions have been found ready when COVID-19 broke? And what I think he was asking was, why, for example, is it that when the imperative to go online became clear, that a lot of institutions were found wanting? And the reason is simple, that a lot of our higher education institutions have been tied down to the fact that traditionally they are contact institutions. And because of that, a lot of these institutions, for example, did not have the infrastructure of a learning management system. I mean, Dr. Oko spoke about the ClickUp. At UNISA for quite a number of years, we were using Sakai. We just changed after COVID, and we then adopted Moodle. But it still operates within the My UNISA framework. A lot of these institutions did not have that. And therefore, they were found wanting. But what Dr. Oko has just shared with us here is what the unit did. We need strategic interventions. We need strategic leadership. And I mean, Dr. Oko took us through a range of things. First of all, what is it that the unit is intended to do? But in that presentation, the issues at stake was how digitally literate and prepared were we all during the advent of the outbreak of COVID-19. But the study, I really am full of admiration for the fact that when you are a manager, you should go into a process called debriefing. You go through processes, and if processes don't work, you have to ask yourself, why didn't they work? And I'm really full of admiration for you, Dr. Oko. The reflection that your unit did was to say, well, we didn't do well. Our students didn't perform well. We need to know why. And to do so, I like the idea that you rolled out the survey. Lots and lots of questions were raised. And the survey or a study, it always gives you the data, which you can then use to say, okay, if we were supposed to have done better, what is it that we should have done and done better? Where did we slip? Where did we fall? How better should we be? And that's what a study does. A study is not something that you do for the purpose of just talking about it. A study is undertaken and conducted because it's supposed to generate data. That data then has to serve as a barometer, something that guides action. And I like the idea that it's out of that study that you were then able to develop your international strategy, revisit your management strategy. And then, I mean, the idea of setting up the program coordination committees, the idea of looking back with onto your sponsors and saying, hey, how do we how do we share ideas, and setting up the sponsors steering committee, the idea of thinking through your staff, the collegial technological support, all those, in my view, are substantive, concrete issues that are guided by a study. The idea of looking into the collegial content, how do you then begin to reflect upon activities and processes that guide your pedagogical support? I like the idea. I was looking at the breakdown of your assessment policy, how, for example, you split the sort of rubric of assignment allocation and the weighting in terms of honors and diploma. We need that. We need a structure. But the whole idea that Dr. Oko brought to our attention of drawing on institutions, structures, and associations that have been there, the reliance of the unit on the NADIOSA quality criteria framework is really informative. But Dr. Oko also took us through a whole range of key influencers in quality e-learning, for example, the 3P model, the EQF model, the TMLF model. All these are, in my view, examples of practice in response to the challenges that are brought about by the COVID-19. And I think for me, as a manager, I'm so full of envy and so full of admiration that you, Dr. Oko, you and your team went into this detailed, steady, but really structured intervention. And I've really learned a lot. I've been managing the UNESCO chair now for the past 3 years. Before that, I was the head of department, and I look back and I think some of the things that you shared with us here are probably things that I'm going to share with our college's executive committee, so that we look into how we roll these things out. I like the idea that you took the bull by the horns and your team and you say, okay, the results are not what we hoped for. Where did we go wrong? And you can only go through that by undertaking a study. In the end, I like the idea.
Prof. Leseka, you went mute. Can you please?
Okay, thank you. When did I go mute?
Just a second ago. I don't know how.
I just thought I'd been rumbling along, or I think I touched the mic by mistake. Thank you very much, Mkhwanazi. You spoke about the engagement of the stakeholders. We don't normally talk about stakeholders, but I think what is of importance in this is the fact that you emphasized the involvement of students. And I was saying, Prof. Peter and I, published a paper in Open Praxis, which is the journal of the International Council of Open and Distance Learning. And one of the things that came out very clearly there is that when academics, lecturers, and everybody else design their assessment plans, they don't do that with the involvement of the students. It's like we set up the program, we're going to ask questions, and you do not know what we are asking. But we know that if we invite somebody else to facilitate, they always say, what do you expect from this? And they say, basically in very clear terms, in this presentation or in this course, you're going to learn this and this and this and this and this. For me, that's a transparent way of saying assessment should be a shared goal. Assessment shouldn't be something that's hidden, something that's intended to trap. Assessment should be approached as a transparent process. When we educate, we don't set people up to failure, but we hold them by the hands and we journey with them. And when you journey with somebody else, they need to know where we are going, so that when we trip and fall together and we rise together. And transparent assessment policy should be all like that. We raise all those issues very clearly in our paper. I like the idea of reflecting on quality criteria, having used those quality criteria, the NADIOSA process, but also the dialogue, digital divide. I was part of this conversation. I set up this conference, and all these issues you raised came along, which then brings me to a question that I would like to pose to you, Dr. Oko. when you spoke about supporting the students, you made mention of the purchase and the provision of the digital devices, the laptops, the gadgets. I'm raising this question because what struck me is that in that section where you spoke about the institute purchasing laptops for all students, and that you've already started distributing them, and I think you raised a number, if I'm not mistaken, of around 520. But I didn't hear you speak about the challenges of connectivity, the challenges of data, and these are issues that came out in the dialogue. The issue is that when we go into, we reach out to our students in the rural areas, and we provide them with gadgets. I think it's important that we also bear in mind the issues of connectivity. Somebody in one of the jokes said, you can buy people a gas stove, but if you do not have a gas connection, you're as good as not having started. Well, with that, let me introduce one of the young and brilliant minds in the College of Education. This young lady is one of those young people that, in my role as a mentor, I've identified, and I work with her. I've brought her into the UNESCO chair, and I'm supporting her in all I can in order for her to shine. I've asked Ms. Mkhwanazi Modise to facilitate the question and answer. Ms. Modise is, oh, Mkhwanazi, do you allow me to go into details? I know you might find this embarrassing, but I think it's important that I say these things. Do I have the permission?
You do, Prof.
Especially in these times of POPI Act, you might later turn around and say, hey, you violated my POPI rights.
No, Prof, go ahead.
I think about 5, 6, maybe 8 years ago, Ms. Modise joined UNISA, believe you me, as an administrator. And for me, this is important. Ms. Modise came in as an administrator, but there was this burning desire for her to not just end up being an administrator for life. And she went into, at UNISA, we have what we call a personal development plan, PDP. And I think Ms. Modise worked on her PDP. In her PDP, she was very clear that these are the things that she wanted to do. She wanted to be at UNISA and use UNISA to improve her lot, to empower herself. She did her bachelor's, she did her honors, and 2 years ago, she completed her master's. And now she's doing her PhD through the distance learning. I think your MEd was conducted and finished through the partnership UNISA has with Oldenburg University. And this is the young person that is part of the development and the grooming. I've invited her to give a seminar at the UNESCO chair, and she's actually coming in next month to give a seminar. And I wanted to provide this platform for Ms. Mkhwanazi to facilitate the Q&A session. Are you comfortable with that, Ms. Modise?
Yes, that is fine, Prof. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I don't have a choice. I'll bring. By the way, I talk as if I'm talking to her right now. This is pre-planned. We already had a conversation about it. So, Ms. Modise, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you so much. Thank you for the introduction. I'm not sure about being young, a mother of a 24-year-old daughter. So, but thank you so much. And really, I really appreciate the support.
I introduced you as a father.
As it?
As a father.
Yes. Okay. Wonderful. Yeah. I understand it. But Prof, thank you so much. Also, thank you, Dr. Oko, for this wonderful presentation. Really, it's making one to scratch our heads, especially as Professor already said that, from the practical and strategic point of view that you bring the stuff on the table. I believe that at the center of a successful distance education system is a well-supported learner. My passion is student support because of the support that I've received as a DE student, also now as an academic from the likes of Prof. Moeketsi and Leseka. I mean, that support it's something that you can't just ignore, and it's something that we need to replicate and keep on, reproducing, so that others can come in and we can hear such kind of introduction. I was actually a PA, prof, a personal assistant, or a secretary rather, at the time. So, at the center of a successful DE system is a well-supported learner, a quality graduate that is ready to step on the world platform and ready to give back to society. And I think this is what I'm doing, Prof. So without saying a lot, I just want to see if anybody has questions, any comments, please, this is your time. Thank you.
How many rounds are we taking?
We're taking about 4 rounds at the go, 3 to 4, depending on the demand or supply.
I'll assist you with the hands
Yes.
here on my side because I can see them.
I don't see any hands.
Yeah, no, but I have the system in control here. So when hands
Okay.
pop up, I should be able to let you know who is on.
Okay. Please, colleagues, let us reflect. What I took from the presentation also, Prof, is that we are definitely not going back, as Dr. Oko said. The future of higher education and distance education really looks different, and I truly believe that opportunities are plenty. And without us stepping back and taking honest stock taking and reflecting on these issues, these opportunities might just pass us by. So this is an opportunity for us to come into the picture and say, hey, let's engage Dr. Oko's presentation.
May I ask Dr. Oko, through you, Chair, to respond? I asked a question about
the challenges.
Connectivity.
Yes, challenges on connectivity.
Data, yeah. While we're waiting for hands, just thought it maybe to crack the eyes.
Yes, thank you very much, Prof, and thank you very much, Modise, and I would like to take this opportunity to encourage you to continue studying. I think I've spent 2/3 of my life studying to be where I am. And one thing that I didn't mention to the audience is that I am a graduate from UNISA. I graduated from UNISA in 2016 with my doctorate. And it is here that I first experienced the pedagogy of care and compassion. I came in as a very naive, afraid, and really unprepared student, but I was nurtured, I was cared for. I experienced kindness in education, something that I never experienced before. I experienced a support system that's out of this world. And it is out of that pedagogy of care and compassion that I was able to complete my studies. And I want to extend my gratitude to my supervisor at that time and the entire UNISA team that supported me to be who I am today. So I thank you. Let me respond to the issue of connectivity and data. When we realized that we cannot offer solutions to all issues, we reached out to those who are already in the field. And that is why we decided to partner with Siafunda. Siafunda is a non-governmental organization, and they have computer labs spread across the country in different provinces. So for now, what we are telling our students to do is to connect, go to Siafunda labs. They are identified there. They go there, identified by the student numbers, and they are able to connect at the lab, either using their own laptops or using the computers that are available at Siafunda labs. They are also given data by the sponsors. So what we have agreed on with the sponsors is that when they are paying school fees, they have to factor in purchase of a laptop and provision of data per semester. If the student decides to use that data for personal gain, they have to buy their own data for their studies. But the students are given laptops at the beginning of the semester, that's factored in their tuition, and data is provided also, that is factored in their tuition. But the connectivity, they are allowed to walk in and out at any Siafunda lab that is near them. Where all this is impossible, we request the students to get in touch with the university and we take care of them on a case-by-case basis. Thank you very much. I saw another hand up.
That was Suri Naidu.
Yes.
Good afternoon, colleagues, and good afternoon to our speaker. It was very, very interesting to see, as I put on the chat, how you made this tangible intervention in a practical and collective consultation with all relevant stakeholders. But my question to you is, and please don't think that I'm looking for something ugly in the program, this accomplishment is really something to be proud of, and you have led by example. But my question to you is, despite all that you have done, and I'm being involved on the ground with education programs, I just want to know that with this model of segregation and integration, what was the greatest systemic challenge you found in developing this program and getting it off the ground? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Naidu.
Sorry, it's not Prof, it's just simple Suri Naidu, Miss.
Sudi Naidu. Thank you, Sudi. Yes, there were very many challenges, really, beginning from the institution, our institution. It's very difficult normally for people to accept their weaknesses. And it is very, very difficult also to bring about change and get a buy-in into the change. And it is also very difficult to get sponsors to cough in more money than was originally intended. So the first challenge, great challenge that we faced was getting the faculty team to accept that we needed to make changes in the way we did our training, because the University of Pretoria already has an education innovation department that conducts all the training. And for us to say that we were going to also do our own training, it was misplaced. So that brought about kind of like a misunderstanding, because why should we do a training when there is already a well-organized training unit within the university? But luckily we were allowed by the management, Faculty of Education Management, to proceed. There was need to introduce new officers, as I said, and as you know, all institutions are cutting their budget cuts. So to introduce a new office called the E-Learning Development and Support Office, it was a huge thing, and I needed to negotiate with HR, and I needed to negotiate with management to introduce this office, because that meant extra expenses. And also, the position of the instructional designer originally was a temporary position, because people felt that an instructional designer is somebody you could do away with. But for me, an instructional designer provides daily ongoing support, technological support, teaching and learning support to my students and my facilitators. So that position had been temporary for years. So, but we were able to convince management and to convince HR that that position needs to be converted to a permanent position so that there is continuity all the time, so that we do not have an instructional designer coming in for 2 months, leaving, another one 3 months, leaving, because they are all young people and they are all looking for permanent positions. So we were able to convince management and HR to convert that position to a permanent position. And actually, our new instructional designer just occupied her new office this month. Very excited, happy, and ready to combat the challenges associated to this lockdown. And so introduction of the e-learning development support officer, conversion of those 2 positions to permanent positions, and introducing a different system of training. Believe me, when you are in management, nobody really believes that you know anything to do with academics. But in order for you to manage Odell, you got to have been trained in that area or have worked in that area, so you are well informed about Odell. So for them to accept for us to conduct our own training, and then with the sponsors, they did not see the point of adding money to buy laptops until the lockdown struck. So when the lockdown struck, then they said, okay, we have to work together. We have to chip in more money so that we are able to buy laptops for these students. Otherwise, we'll be cheating ourselves. And then we realized that we do not have enough manpower that could go out there to conduct a digital literacy campaign. So we partnered with a non-governmental organization, Siafunda. So partnership, we are all going to have to partner. We are going to have to work together to solve these issues. But more than anything else, let's start from where we are. What can we learn from each other, from where we are, so that we can map the way forward together? Thank you, Nigel.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mary. I appreciate your sincere response to the question I posed. One last question, if I may.
Yes, you may.
Okay. I just wanted to know from you, in terms of student participation, has your group considered setting up a WhatsApp or Telegram group for your students? I'm just asking. And if not, why not? Thank you.
May I go, Chair? Ms. Modise?
Yes, please go ahead. Go ahead, Dr. Oko.
Yes. We have a WhatsApp and SMS system that we use, but we use it for administrative purposes. The UDE has a student administration wing that basically is in charge of all our communication with students except academics. So that is where we use our WhatsApp and SMS tools. For teaching, we want to fully utilize the functionalities of the learning management system. The Blackboard really is, people normally say it is the Mercedes-Benz of all learning management systems in the world today. It's got communication functionalities, so I can communicate with my students as a group, as an individual. I can have video sessions, synchronous or asynchronous sessions within the Blackboard. I can check on their assignments and mark it online and even send it back to them for corrections. We have a section of the Blackboard that where we record our marks and the marking center, and we have resources where we upload all the teaching resources. So we found that the Blackboard really has provided us with all the functionalities. We can send a message to individual students and students at a group, and we can have discussion forum session just within the Blackboard. And we found that when we use this one platform, and all our students are trained to utilize this platform, it makes the work easier for the students and for the facilitators. But otherwise, our WhatsApp group and our SMS groups are used mainly for administrative purposes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Oko. I also just want to been reflecting on the notion of supporting students before they register. I think I heard you say something like that.
Yes.
I think it's something that the institutions must really look towards actualizing. And with your unit, at what point in the system do you identify such students, and what sort of support do you give to the students that have not yet fully committed and registered with the university?
Thank you very much. This was a tough one to figure out. This was a really tough one to figure out, but we figured it out and it's working for now. Once students apply, our system runs on a 6-month cycle. So we have a year. The first cycle begins in October and ends in April, and the next cycle begins in April and ends towards the end of September. So we are continuously receiving applications throughout the year. Once a student is admitted and tuition paid and a student number given, they are then enrolled in our systems, in our admin systems and in our teaching systems.
Oh.
Then we start communicating with them. We introduce them to Siafunda. The first thing we do is we purchase laptops for them. Once we purchase the laptops are dispatched to every student who's been registered, student number given, enrolled in our systems, laptop is purchased, and we distribute the laptops to them. Once they have their laptops, they are introduced to Siafunda and Siafunda Labs, where we expect them to go according to the timetable that is sent to them. And the training by Siafunda, which is just digital literacy, introduction to digital literacy, basic introduction to digital literacy. They go to these labs and there they meet a facilitator provided by Siafunda who introduces them to the laptop in their hands and to the computers in the lab. It's a process of a month. That is before they start studying. Once they've been introduced to the computer, there's another 1 month that they go through what we call module O. It is module 0. It counts for nothing, but it assists the students in preparing to use our technological tools that we have at the university. Again, module O now is done online because remember, they'll have been introduced to the basic computer tools. So they go through module O. By the time they finish their module O, the students who will be joining us in October, then now we conduct an official orientation session in September. So the process for students who are going to join us in October has already begun, and we are in August. We have already distributed the laptops. The laptops went to Limpopo yesterday. 300 laptops went out yesterday. In September, beginning of September, they are with Siafunda, taking place in the digital literacy campaign. By the end of September, we are introducing them to module O. Module O, their playground, playing with the learning management system. And towards the end of October, they have their they start their official learning of their first module. So we have done this once, we are doing it now for the second time, and by mid next year, we are hoping that our research department headed by Dr. Luko, will now go out and conduct a survey and find out if what we have put in place so far, if it has any effect. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Oko. Prof. Leseka, I've noted your hand. You'll go first, and then Ngaka Musia will go next. Thank you.
Thanks, Mkhwanazi. Dr. Oko, I seem to be the only one who has loved this presentation because I find it quite fascinating. Maybe it's because you and I are sharing the managerial space. I've got two, let me call them questions. I would hate to call them comments because I probably need a response from you. In the section on collegial technological support, where you spoke about enlisting the services of Siafunda, quite an admirable and I think quite a creative and proactive initiative. You speak about Siafunda providing digital literacy support in terms of the digital literacy campaign. But I also noticed that one of the structures that your team has established through your leadership, of course, is the e-learning development and support office. I would like to hear from you, how do the two entities work? Is there closer cooperation between the work that Siafunda does, and how does it differ from the work or the mandate of the e-learning development and support office? That is one. And the second question, and this is also where I thought, and I would need your clarification here. I thought I sense something that could be a disjuncture. In the findings of your survey, one of the takeaway, sort of the emerging trend that I think you highlighted as one of the findings, was that you, as a collective, you realized or you noticed that what had been happening all along was that you were always planning for the students and not with the students. But I then noticed that after the study, in the intervention strategy of the revised management strategy, one of the elements that emerges from that as a way forward was that the team then set up goals for the students. And I just thought, I wanted to find out, as you were going through re-strategizing or deciphering data from the studies and refining your strategy, was there ever at any one stage the involvement with the students as a way of responding to say, you all noticed that previously you were planning for the students, but you're not planning with them. But I was concerned when this point that part of the strategy going forward was to set up goals for the student. It seems to me that even post the survey, that practice of thinking for the students and not working with the students seems to have continued, which kind of suggests that there is still a disjuncture between the emergent trends and the policy planning and implementation going forward. I'll stop there, but I just thought that I could just prick your thoughts on those matters. Thank you.
Yes, with the permission of Modise.
Yes. I was going to ask if you want to jump in, or should we get Ngaka to send his question also? Or you can respond to Prof. Leseka, it's okay.
Yes, let me respond to Prof. And Prof, you are very, very right. This new plan that we are rolling out is not problems-free. We know that there will be challenges, and there already are challenges that we are dealing with. Now, when it comes to the relationship between Siafunda and the Office of the EDS E-Learning Development Support Office that is headed by Zahira Kasim, who is a PhD student, she developed the manual that we gave to Siafunda to use for training in the digital literacy campaign. And We did that because we came to the realization that Siafunda members are not necessarily teachers. This is an NGO that is sponsored by huge well-known organizations like Microsoft, Microsoft, Intel, Facebook. They're an NGO that is interested in developing community, but they are not necessarily teachers. So the EDS developed the manual that Siafunda is using for the digital literacy campaign. And the EDS office is the office that will go out or is planning to go out in the field to oversee or just to check the work being done by Siafunda tutors. And by the way, the Siafunda tutors are young people from the localities, young people from the provinces. Some of them are university students. Some of them are high school students who are computer literate. Some of them are homemakers, and they recruit them just to assist them in training their students, to prepare them for their official studying at the University of Pretoria. So these people are not teachers. So it is the role of the EDS to go out there to make sure that they are doing the right thing and that they are using the material that we have provided them with. That is the relationship. Now, the voice of the students. We get the voice of the student through the inquiries that they send, through the complaints that they send, and we receive a lot, and through the voice of their sponsors who meet with us. And it was the sponsors who met with us in the steering committee that told us, apart from what we found out from the survey, it is the sponsors who told us that students are really, really struggling with the technology. And it was at a meeting with the sponsors that we sought to find out an organization that's already existing out there that we can work with. And you know, that posed a problem because the reputation of the university is at stake here. So we must clearly say, we had to clearly state to the university that Siafunda are not employed by the university, but that they are a non-governmental organization interested in development of our people. And their work takes them across the nation of South Africa. They are available throughout the provinces in South Africa. So when I talked about setting up goals, we as the UDE have our operational meetings every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks we have our ops meeting, and in this meeting, it's always virtual. We have a representative of the administration, we have instructional designer, we have the EDS, e-learning development support officer, and we have a representative of UP management, from the Dean's office. And in this meeting, we review inquiries that we've received throughout the week, the 2 weeks. We review the complaints that we are receiving, and we review the suggestions that we are also receiving from our facilitators. Then we set up goals. We set up goals together and follow up on those goals. And what I said is that we do this for the benefit of the students, because whether they are questions, they are inquiries, they are concerns, it is all about the students. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Oko. The next question is coming from, I'm looking at the time profile, it's like 5 minutes to 12. Ngaka Musia, it's your turn.
Thanks, Mpho. Thank you very much, Dr. Oko, for a very insightful presentation. I just have a few questions. I'll just give two. And the first one is, during the ODL conference and during this presentation also, You mentioned that academics or academia was found wanting or unprepared by COVID-19 attack. And all this time I was wondering and thinking, I don't know how academia would have been prepared for this, because I've never seen any contingency planning done at teaching and learning level. Maybe in management it's done, I don't know about it, but at teaching and learning level, there are no plans of what if. We don't do scenario planning, we just teach. And I want to know if we were ready, or what do we do from now? Are we going to turn every university into an ODL? Is every university now going to teach online distance, using online distance learning paradigms? I mean, UNISA is still struggling with teaching engineering online. I can imagine what's going to happen to VETS, UCT, and Stellenbosch. They don't even have online labs. At least at UNISA, we have a little bit of that now, and we can teach engineering online distance. I must also tell you that I was one of the first few groups that was part of UP in around 2004 for BSc honors. I was doing my BSc honors in management technology. And I remember lecturers were struggling with online teaching at UP. So I wonder if things are better now.
Yes.
But I just wonder what's going to happen from now. Is every university going to teach online distance? Last question, I just want to piggyback on one, Prof. It's like a second question. And that is, what is support in ODL? You know, every time we talk about student support in ODL, I'm telling you, we're talking computers, we're talking data, what about the pedagogy of teaching and learning support? I've tried to look for that, where you try and find out, what do I do when students struggle with the concept? How do I make sure that all students by the end of the year are at the level that I can almost guarantee that they're going to pass, except the students who are not serious about their work? That kind of support does not exist. And and if you know, please point me in a direction. I want to see that pedagogy of student support in terms of making students understand the subject matter in an ODL environment. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for a very insightful presentation.
Wonderful. With the permission of the chair.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yes. Those two questions are very relevant and very interesting indeed, and right on point. When I said that we were not prepared for the lockdown, remember, all institutions of higher learning switched overnight to teaching at a distance. Now, you and I, who are involved in distance education, and as was stated in the quality criteria frameworks, quality criteria models that we looked at, ODL requires processes of development. You prepare for it. You develop human capacity, you develop equipment, you develop technological infrastructure, you avail technological tools, then you equip the facilitators with a different set of pedagogical skills. You even repackage the content to suit offering at a distance. When we teach on a face-to-face basis, I have my bag with my notes or my laptop with my notes, and I can just simply take that laptop or my bag into a classroom and I find students seated. And I start from where I left. In fact, in most institutions of higher learning, what's been going around is people have been preaching rather than teaching. So when the lockdown struck, we had our notes, we had our bags, and we were hoping to go to class the following day. But all of a sudden, the students were no longer in the classroom and you were at home. So that is the unpreparedness that I was referring to. And some of these students were at home, they didn't have computers. Some of the facilitators also were at home, they didn't have dependable computers. They lacked in e-learning teaching skills. They had content that was in form of notes, but not repackaged for offer in an online space or in an Odell space. And we don't have to go deeply into that. So that was the unpreparedness. And it affected all institutions of learning except such institutions like UNISA, UK Open, Athabasca, Indira Gandhi, those institutions that have been in Odell for years. For them, it was business as usual, unless if you tell me otherwise. But for institutions, contact institutions, it was completely different. And I have described what it was like. Now, for the unit for distance education, we were much better off than the entire UP because we were already prepared. We had already started the process of digital migration, but we were not perfectly there yet. We were in the process. And even for the entire UP, the learning management system was there for them to use, but not everybody bought into using the learning management system. So those are the people who really struggled. Then your next question, from now, what is the future? And that is what I said, we have to start reimagining, because even UNISA is not going to be set up as it is in the next 5 years. Things are going to start changing. And things are going to start changing because contact institutions may decide to move on. As I said, the University of Pretoria had already adopted blended learning. We are right now actually having meetings and thinking where to next. Are we staying with blended learning or are we moving to high flex mode of learning? We are seeing a situation where, out of fear of the disease, of the pandemic, some students will just say, I want to continue studying with you, but I'll not come and sit in class. And some of them will say, I am finding it very difficult to learn through the computer. Therefore, I want to come and sit in class and listen to a teacher. So it is only those institutions that will introduce that flexibility where they are able to offer contact face-to-face, and they are also able to offer online. And that is the one that we are calling high flex. And their students are able to move fluidly, able to move freely from contact to online. It is only those institutions that are going to have all their courses available online, and at the same time, those courses available on a face-to-face basis that are going to survive. Institutions who are not going to be willing to make changes, institutions who are not going to be willing to modify their ways of teaching, institutions that are not going to listen to their students and respond to their students' need. And I quote my former boss, will either have to close, they will sell, or they will merge. So let it not come as a surprise if these are discussions that are going to take place in your institutions. People will want to merge with those who are already experienced. Institutions are going to merge with the institutions that are already experienced. Institutions are going to move on to the high flex mode of learning. But it's going to be very difficult to find an institution of higher learning that is only offering contact. I thank you very much for that question. It was very much on point. I hope I've responded to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Oko. I think Ngaka Musia has spoken like a true engineer, talking about scenario planning. Ngaka, I just want to also challenge you that with that kind of knowledge and intelligence, bring it forth to the likes of Dr. Oko, the management, and whoever it is that has ears to hear, and let's see what we do with that intelligence. We can't continue asking questions and not diving in with the sharks and making sure that rescue of higher education institution actually happens. Prof. Leseka, the Demusia had asked a question to you, and I see again Dr. Oko wants to maybe quickly reflect before we close. Dr. Oko, over to you. Then Dr. Leseka, I don't know if you want to respond to Ngakamusia also.
Yes, just one point. One point that I thought of last night, and in response to our last speaker, the curriculum at university level is going to change. We are going to see new courses, new areas being studied at university level. We are talking about artificial intelligence. What is artificial intelligence? We're going to see things like that. We are going to see new courses that are geared towards equipping humanity to survive in a technology-controlled environment. So things are not going to remain the same. But more than anything, as Modise said, we need to tap into the intellect of those who know, those who've been there. We all have something to offer. Let's start talking more to each other than we did before. Thank you very much. I'm done, Ms. Modise.
Thank you, Dr. Oko. Dr. Leseka, are you coming in?
I want to bring in Ngaka here. Ngaka, can we engage? What is it that actually worries you?
Prof, Prof, I'm actually looking at student support being, at the moment, I see it being a bigger percentage of it being supporting students with technology, equipment, data. But there is a very almost insignificant availability of information on how to support students or the pedagogy of supporting of student support in terms of how do we ensure that students, for example, understand concepts and end up grasping those concepts. You know, my famous example of me coming from the townships, I didn't even know what a swimming pool is. And every time they ask a question in engineering, that a density question, if you jump into a swimming pool, you displace the amount of water that equals to your weight. It was very difficult for me to imagine that because I didn't have a swimming pool. And today, especially in UNISA, you find students of different intellect and performance levels for metric. And these guys, if you don't break them into groups, and the lowest group, you need to break down the subject matter so that they can grasp things that they were supposed to learn before they come to university, and then teach them what they know, and then you can move them up to a level where they can be good engineers. But that pedagogy or that research on that pedagogy, it's very slim and far apart. You can't find something like that. So I was just asking, is student support in ODL about technology, equipment, data? What about, you know what Dr. Oko said, that some students will say, I don't know how to study with a computer, therefore I'm totally lost. What about those things that make teaching and learning difficult or learning difficult for students? Thanks, Paul.
Yeah, you see, I wanted you to do that. For those of you who might not know, Ngaka and I are actively involved. We just, in our conversations, we just realized that we are homeboys. Ngaka and I come from Katlehong. And we have had this conversation. Sometimes I'll be working in my garden, and I think I've spoken at length with Ngaka. We talk a lot. Just to come back to your question, one of the major challenges, and I'll talk about UNISA. One of the major challenges facing UNISA right now is not so much about students, but it's about the academics. I'm a teacher by training. I spent 4 years at the National University of Lesotho, where I trained as a teacher. From the second year onwards until the fourth year, by the way, the degrees in Southern African countries, they go for a duration of 4 years, not 3, as in the case here. For the 3 years, there were almost every day of the week, there were days that were dedicated for us to spend at least an hour and a half in a micro teaching lab. By that I mean we were in an environment where, while we were doing our content, attending courses in English, courses in history, courses in African and social studies, but we were equally spending a lot of time in the teaching practice lab, where we were going through a whole range of things: micro teaching, understanding technology, basically classroom management. These are the things that we were trained into. And when I left university, I went to teach, I went to vets. I then went also to teach at a teacher training college in Taung. Again, I was very impressed, because anyone who will know what was happening in the teacher, they were then called teacher training colleges, and then they became teacher education colleges. We spent a lot of time in the lab training teachers, but we also spent a lot of time in the field in teaching practice, where we took our students there. I remember at Taung, I was charged with developing a teacher evaluation program. So we would send teachers to go and look into our student teachers, and basically observe, evaluate, sit with them and say, this is what you're doing and this is what you did. Students would spend a lot of time in the lab teaching under camera. Then we play the tape and we show them throughout what is it that you should have done here. Look at your movement. When you write, don't write with your back on the screen. All those things. When you write on the board, make sure that you cover the board like this, spread it. These are things that anyone who is a trained teacher will associate with. The problem with universities like UNISA, for example, is that we have lots and lots of people with PhDs in their own different designs, but we actually don't have a huge percentage of people that are trained as teachers. So while you're concerned about reaching out to students, I think you should be concerned with the very same people who are supposed to be reaching out to students. Are these people equipped with that? Now, I am currently a member of the Council on Higher Education's peer advisory group. I was invited by the CEO of Council on Higher Education, Dr. Whitty Green. And there's a team of us there. We are working on a program called the Implementation of the Reconceptualizing Learning and Teaching. It's called RELATE project. But also, you should know that in the Department of Higher Education, I'm also a member of that committee. There is a committee that is responsible for the scholarship of teaching and learning. Here at UNISA, it's called SOTOL. What we are doing there, we are developing programs. There's a whole team of us from Rose, UKZN, UCT, Nelson Mandela, UNISA, I think in the University of Pretoria. What you are doing there, we have come to recognize that not everyone who comes to the university is a trained teacher. Yes, people have qualifications, they have PhDs, but not many of them are qualified teachers. So what we are doing, we are developing a program to make university lecturers good teachers. We've just received 5 million rands from the Department of Higher Education and Training. There's a whole consortium of us, and we are led by a professor at VETS. What we are doing right now, we have put in place a whole range of programs. We'll be reaching out to universities, identifying people and creating a facilitation of programs. How do you get lecturers to become good teachers? We need to recognize that. When you're in the faculty of law, you train people into jurisprudence. And then we harvest from that very same group. We bring them in, they teach. So a lot of them will teach the way they were taught. And whoever might have taught them who was not a teacher will have been teaching the way they were taught. So there is a continuous recycling of bad pedagogical approaches. For you to be a teacher, you have to come from that nomenclature of teachers. When I was a teacher, you get trained into teaching methodology, there's a whole range of methods that you go into. You get trained into classroom management. You get trained into the psychology of teaching. A lot of people that are at university, they may have PhDs, they may have the knowledge of the content, but they are not trained teachers. So before we jump into how we reach out to students, let's ask ourselves a question. who are the people here in the universities who are teaching? Where do they come from? Are they teachers? You can ask a question around here. Let me pause and ask all the people who are here, how many of you are trained teachers?
Yeah, Prof, you are right. I agree with you.
You know, if I throw that question even here, you realize that not many people here are trained teachers, but we are all teaching. So, and I find that quite problematic, and I'll tell you why. In a court of law, if Ngaka, you have a problem and you have to appear in a court of law, you cannot go to a hardware center and say, hey, or a panel beating division and say, hey, you are good with the light. Can you come and represent me in a court of law? No, it doesn't work like that. You go for someone with a nuance and deeper understanding of jurisprudence. Now, in the times of COVID, if you think that you're having a heart attack, you're not going to go to a vendor and say, hey, you're selling bananas. Maybe these are good with heart. I think I'm having a heart attack. No, you go to a hospital and you look for a specialist. You go for a specific unit. But you know, the problem with that is that when it comes to teaching, particularly at universities, we don't concern ourselves with qualified people. The same thing happens in schools. I followed the parliamentary debates in where someone in the DA challenged Minister Njimu Checha to tell Parliament how many people who are members of staff in the DBE are qualified or underqualified. I think the talk was about 70 or 75,000 people who have matric and who are teaching. So you see, there's a problem that I'm raising our awareness here of a recycling of mediocrity. People can have knowledge of content, but if you can't deliver it because you're not trained to deliver it, there's a problem. So I hear you very well, and I'm sharing with you these programs that I'm a part of. Fortunately, in Lademusia, as I just said, I'm heavily involved with Council on Higher Education. I'm heavily involved with the DHET, and
Leseka, you're muted again.
Sorry about that. We have come to recognize and realize that there are lots and lots of people with sound content knowledge. I mean, if you talk about, if I talk about your faculty in Tatingaka, there are lots and lots of people in computer science, in engineering, in whatever, who are well versed with the concepts in their own individual disciplines and paradigms, but who are not actually well-trained teachers. So these initiatives that I'm mentioning are initiatives that from the Department of Higher Education's point of view and from the Council of Higher Education's point of view, we have come to realize that there is a huge gap where there is a need for intervention. And I'm very privileged because I've been in this field of higher education for over 30 years, and I've come to a point where from the days of Professor Bajnath, who I worked with here at UNISA as the Pro-Vice Chancellor, when he moved over to become the CEO of the Council on Higher Education, he's one of those people who always found me and called me in. So I've been in the past 5 or 6 years, I've been very much involved in the review processes in the higher education and in Council on Higher Education. One of the debates that we have come to terms with is that we need to get to a stage where university lecturers also become people who are well versed in the delivery of the pedagogical elements. Not many people, I think we're talking about over 70% of people who are working in universities are not actually qualified teachers. So there is that disjuncture. So I don't know if that answers your question. We need to, my view is that we need to get to a stage where if you are going to teach, you definitely have to teach. I spent about 2.5 years at the Institute of Education, University of London, and I know the director there came out with a massive radical campaign, and he looked at the staff and said, if you are working at the Institute of Education, this is an institute that trains teachers. If you have a BA or you have an MA, it's important that you have an educational qualification. There were people there who had been teaching for 20 or so years who just had MA in English, whatever, and he said, you must at least have a PGCE, which means you must at least be certified to teach and be certified by a reputable institution, which means you need to go through a rigorous program that when you have passed it, we say you have been fully inducted into the ins and outs of teaching. So that is the problem. And you're absolutely right. We can't reach out to students because we are not able to even communicate those nuanced pedagogical challenges because we have not, a lot of these people have not been immersed in that. So I think you are raising an important issue. I recognize that. And what I'm sharing with you is that even at the executive policy level, this is a matter that is now being acknowledged, and there are plans in place now to intervene in that area. I'm part of plans at the DHET that look into turning teachers turning lecturers into teachers. I'm part of the plan in the CHE that also looks into how we relate, how we get lecturers to begin to relate from a more informed pedagogical point of view. Is that okay, Dr. MC?
Kelly, well, Prof, it's more than okay. Thank you very much, Prof.
Well,
Thank
through you,
Prof.
Chair.
Leseka. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yes.
through you, Chair. Thank you very much, Mkhwanazi. You know, I
Yeah.
can always count on you to come in and steer the ship, and you've done excellently well. Can I then bring one of my postdoctoral fellows, Dr. Marikanyo Akintolo, to give a vote of thanks? Dr. A, are you ready?
Yeah, Prof, I'm here. Can you hear me, Prof?
It's your space now. Shoot.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Oko. We really appreciate your presence. It was really an engaging presentation, and then we really appreciate it. The UNESCO chair of Open and Distant Learning really appreciate your presence in this our monthly webinar. We look forward to forming more collaboration with you. Then I would say that what actually struck me was the diving in, the courage to dive in, and then the intervention is very, very, very profound. You engage, you develop, you support, and then you are finding a better way to really form the assessment. Thank you so much, Doc. Really appreciate your presentation. And then we say when we call on you some other time, you will really answer us. Thank you. And thank you. And thank you everyone for really showing up for the monthly seminar. We look forward to seeing you next month. Thank you so much.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Kinto. Thank you all. I always close this seminar by really thanking you. I regard you as the UNESCO chair on ODEL patrons. I mean, there are people who are here every month, and you know, we cannot have a seminar without you, the audience. We cannot have a seminar without you, the patrons, because you engage. And I always reiterate that these seminars are a platform for us to begin to reflect on the issues that face us on a daily basis in ODEL, and to find solutions or to reflect on research, but to enrich us, to guide us going forward. We are in a very precarious moment in history where COVID has basically turned our lives upside down. And it's important that we can find a platform like this where we can reflect on the challenges and we can share experiences, and then we can move forward and put those solutions in. Dr. Oko, thank you for being with us. Mkhwanazi, thank you very much. And my team, the Secretariat, Dumelo and Musa. Without this team in the background, the seminars don't always go ahead. These are people who, you know, develop the posters, who arrange for these links. Basically, the UNESCO chair is driven by this team of young, energetic, and delightful people that surround me. And with that, I thank you very much. Take care. Be careful. Please, as I always say, avoid the malls. Malls are super spreaders of COVID. I've been vaccinated. I hope all of you don't become vaccination reluctance. Get vaccinated. I've gone through the World Health Organization full regimen, and I encourage you all to do so. It's just to protect ourselves. Let's be safe, and thank you very much. I appreciate your presence. Bye-bye. This is the time when we all unmute.
Thank you, Prof.
Bye.
We need to hear each other.
Bye.
Yes, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.